In one American city, rent has dropped so low you could pay for a two-bedroom apartment, a storage unit, and therapy, and still have cash left over for takeout. The downside? You might be the only living soul on your street. We talk about the housing crisis like it's universal, but it isn't. In some places, the crisis flipped inside out. Rents are plunging, apartments are staying empty, and landlords are quietly panicking. Because when rent gets that cheap, something else is usually broken. Maybe crime, maybe the economy, or maybe it's simply a city the rest of the country forgot existed. Today, we're counting down 10 cities where rent is so inexpensive, it's almost unsettling. Don't let the price tags mislead you. This isn't a list of budget-friendly havens. It's a tour through places where economics, politics, and sheer human oddness collide. You'll see a college town where landlords are literally paying students to stay. A southern city offering bargain-priced homes right next to levees, holding back an actual floodplain. And yes, one town where the deer roam the streets like a neighborhood gang. Think you already know America's best-kept secrets? Let's find out how many of these you've heard of, or would even dare to move to. And stick around for the city where wildlife acts like it runs the HOA. Pick the wrong, cheap city, and sure, you'll save money, but you might lose a few years off your life. Smash like if you browse Zillow just to feel something. Subscribe if you want the truth. No realtor will ever willingly tell you. Rent might be low, but choosing wrong? That's expensive. Let's get into it. Number 10, Tulsa. Tulsa will hand you $10,000 just to move there. Sounds amazing, until you remember places usually resort to bribes when something is, metaphorically or literally, on fire. Tulsa, Oklahoma. Land of oil magnates, cowboy art, and mid-century diners, still serving liver and onions like it's a delicacy. You might think you've never been to Tulsa, but if you've ever seen a Route 66 meme, you've probably seen half the town already. It's got a compact downtown, a surprisingly strong indie music scene, and a skyline that whispers, "Our golden age was 1963. As for rent, about $730 for a one-bedroom, not a typo, roughly half the national average. So, what's the issue? Tulsa created a remote worker incentive program that made national headlines. Outsiders moved in, opened their laptops, life coaches multiplied, but the vacancies kept rising. The rental vacancy rate sits at 12.4%. Population growth? Barely moving. Crime? 40% above the national average. And locals are starting to get irritated by the imported optimism, especially when a cafe named Java the Hutt begins charging $7 for a latte. One Redditor put it perfectly. Tulsa is like if Portland and Texas had a baby, then abandoned it in a parking lot. And the heat? It's the type of heat that sneaks up on you like a mosquito that's been training CrossFit. By June, your bones feel like they're sweating. And if your AC dies mid-heat wave, your landlord's advice will be, try a fan. Sir, that is not a fan issue. That is funeral territory. It's 5 p.m., the sky is glowing post-storm orange. Someone 4 blocks away is practicing blues guitar, and for a moment, Tulsa feels magical. Then a freight train screams through at 2 a.m., and you remember railroads never left here. Number 9, Shreveport. In Shreveport, Louisiana, you can rent an entire house for less than the cost of parking in San Francisco for a week. Problem: half the block might already be abandoned. A once lively hub of riverboats, jazz, oil money, and casinos, Shreveport still has heart, culture, soul food, music. But it's also a city having an identity crisis. Is it Southern, Cajun, Midwestern, Texan adjacent? Somehow all and none. Median rent, $680. Cost of living, 22% below average. Commutes, 17 minutes. Vibe, somewhere between underrated gem and left behind by time. But here's the truth. Vacancy rate, 21%, nearly 1 in 5 homes empty. Property crime, 60% higher than U.S. average. Violent crime, also elevated. The job market, trying but still recovering from a 2-decade industrial slump. Infrastructure, potholes so deep they deserve their own GPS coordinates. And the heat? Imagine being slow-cooked in gumbo steam. The air is soup, and your shirt regrets being fabric. You're on a porch swing, sweet tea in hand, trumpet solo echoing somewhere. The street is quiet, too quiet. Your neighbors' homes? Boarded up. You sit there wondering, is this tranquility or population decline with ambiance? Shreveport once had more empty homes than open jobs. That's not a market, that's a clearance rack. If you thought this was odd, wait until you see the next city, where the economy tried a reboot, crashed, and never remembered the password. Number 8, Akron. In Akron, Ohio, a one-bedroom often rents for less than 4 Uber Eats deliveries. And unlike your food, the apartment will still be warm when you get it. Once the tire capital of the world, home of Goodyear, Firestone, and the phrase tire fire, Akron also gave us LeBron James and underrated chili. The city has good bones. Brick buildings, leafy neighborhoods, diners that feel haunted in a comforting way. Median rent? $690. Cost of living? 18% below average. Commute? Under 20 minutes. Average home price? About $130,000. The whole house, not just a down payment. So what's wrong? Akron isn't collapsing. It's recovering from an industrial crash so intense even the pigeons left. Since the 80s, the city's been trying to reinvent itself. Biomed, small businesses, downtown makeovers. But it's moving at dial-up speed in a fiber optic era. Unemployment? 4.7%, though job quality tells a different story. Property crime? 27% above average. Housing vacancies? 7%, not catastrophic, just echo-prone. A Redditor described it best. Akron is like a thrift store, cheap, weird, and full of stuff that used to matter. Driving here? Chaos. Turn signals optional. Potholes so deep they might legally be canyons. Biking? Only if you enjoy losing wheels and hope simultaneously. You're in Highland Square, breathing in wet leaves in someone's grill. Jazz spills from a window. Your rent is $700. You've got space, a backyard, a calming kind of quiet. Feels like living in a sitcom from 1993 that wasn't renewed, but also never got canceled. Akron's property crime rate is 260% higher than Boise's, where people leave their cars unlocked out of boredom. Would you choose peace over prestige if it came with potholes and potential? Comment, Team Akron, or not worth the tires? Number 7, Rochester. Rochester is one of the rare cities where you can snag a one-bedroom for under $720 and get frostbite checking your mailbox. This is Rochester, New York, once the proud home of Kodak, Xerox, and Bosch Lamb. Now, more known for cheap rent, brutal winters, and being Buffalo's forgotten cousin. On paper, it looks like a steal. Median one bed at $710, cost of living 15% below average, commutes around 20 minutes, and enough indie cafes to caffeinate an army. But Rochester isn't just quirky, it's hiding something. Vacancy rate? Over 10%. That's landlords throwing in parking, microwaves, and emotional support just to secure tenants. Property crime? 36% above the national average. Violent crime? Rising, not Detroit level, but enough to justify triple locking your vintage door. The job market is attempting a tech and healthcare makeover, but the process is awkward. Think your dad tries TikTok energy. And the weather? 6-month winters. Someone from Rochester once said, "We have 2 seasons, winter and construction, and both make you late." By January, the whole city feels flash frozen. Try waiting for a bus when the wind tries to repossess your nose. You stroll down East Avenue, jazz drifting from a hidden bar, snow falling like a movie scene, until your eyelids freeze mid-blink and you trip on the 37th unshoveled sidewalk. Number 6, Lubbock. In Lubbock, Texas, you can rent a one-bedroom for about $650, or just squat in one of the shiny new buildings no one's moved into yet. Same vibe. Lubbock is a classic college town blended with desert plains. Home to Texas Tech, Buddy Holly, and more flatland than your least charismatic ex. The people are kind, the streets wide, and everything runs at molasses speed. Rent? $650. Cost of living 16% below average. Homes around $145,000. Commute 17 minutes, tacos included. But here's the catch. Lubbock overbuilt. Developers predicted more students and workers. Instead, graduates left. Vacancy rate around 11%. Jobs, mostly low-wage or tied to the university. Population growth, stalling. And the wind, Lubbock wind doesn't blow. It shoves. Dust in your eyes, hats to Kansas, umbrellas into retirement. You've got a 2-bedroom with hardwood floors and a balcony view of endless sky. Rent? $640. Sunsets? Stunning. The wind? Assaultive. Also, your entire floor? Empty. If Lubbock feels lonely, the next city feels like a dare. Number 5, Macon. In Macon, Georgia, you can rent a solid one-bedroom for under $630, assuming you don't mind sleeping lightly and keeping your car keys within reach. Macon looks sweet at first glance. Music history everywhere. Otis Redding, Little Richard, the Allman Brothers. Cherry blossoms, old southern mansions that scream Gothic Airbnb. Walk down Cherry Street and hear live jazz from a bar that hasn't been dusted since Nixon. Rent? $629. Cost of living? 23% below average. Median home? $145,000. Commute 15 to 20 minutes. But behind the charm, a much harsher reality. Violent crime, 125% above national average. Property crime also high. Carjackings, break-ins, theft, and not isolated to a single zip code. Police departments are stretched thin. Community efforts exist, but the numbers aren't budging. Cheap rent isn't generosity, it's survival mode. A local put it bluntly, Macon's great if you like music, cheap rent, and occasional gunshots as background noise. Weather? Chaos. 43 degrees in the morning, 82 degrees at noon, thunderstorms at dinner. Humidity so thick it could be canned. Wear black in July only if you want to be found passed out behind a Kroger. Boise has half Macon's population and a quarter of the crime. One city gives you calm, the other gives you character, and reasons to carry pepper spray. Number 4, Pine Bluff. In Pine Bluff, Arkansas, you can rent a 2-bedroom home for less than the cost of a gym membership no one uses. And that tracks, because the cardio you'll get dodging potholes and wildlife is enough. Pine Bluff used to be a boomtown, cotton, railroads, blues. Now it's an echo of what it was, with empty buildings and upside-down flags. And yet, it has this haunting pull. Median rent, $582. Cost of living, 25% below average. Unemployment, 6.5%. Violent crime, 4 times the national average. Population, down 30% since 2000. The town is shrinking fast. People leave, houses sit empty, and nature moves back in. Not in a romantic way, in a feral hog in your backyard. Sidewalks optional. Streetlights, rumors. Mailmen, using GPS. Traffic lights, more like suggestions. You're on your porch at sunset, sweet tea in hand, mosquitoes circling like tiny drones. A deer stares at you like it pays the mortgage. You wave. It doesn't. Welcome to Pine Bluff. The crime rate is higher than Chicago's, but unlike Chicago, your neighbors might say hello and then ask if you've seen their goat. Would you trade convenience and safety for isolation and rent under $600? Bluff life or bluff no? Number 3, Decatur. If you've ever wondered what it's like living in a city whose glory days were during the Great Depression, meet Decatur, Illinois, where rent is cheap and so is the structural integrity of half the buildings. Decatur smells like corn syrup and feels like your grandma's basement, comforting until the lights flicker. Median rent, $633. Cost of living, 24% below average. Unemployment, 7.2%. Violent crime, 75% above average. Population, down 8.5% in a decade. Decatur is that hometown friend who swears they're planning something big. Spoiler, the big thing is usually a meat processing plant. Roads, paved by toddlers on a sugar crash. One pothole can take out your tire and part of your dignity. Roundabouts, more like roulette wheels. Picture this, a creaky 3-bedroom with a wraparound porch and a sagging roof. Mortgage, $400. Trains, passing every 17 minutes, eternally. Neighbors, possibly ghosts, but polite ones. Fun fact, Decatur has more fast food chains per capita than New York City. Not impressive, just desperate. Number 2, Peoria. Peoria is the place companies use to test products. If it succeeds in Peoria, it'll work anywhere, except even Peoria stopped showing up. Peoria, Illinois, the definition of middle America. Just enough charm to be credible, just enough decline to be affordable. It used to represent the heartbeat of the country. Politicians once asked, will it play in Peoria? Now, they mostly skip it. Median rent, $625. Cost of living, 22% below average. Homes, about $115,000. Commute, 18 minutes. What went wrong? Caterpillar used to be Peoria's anchor. Then it moved its HQ and the city deflated. Population down 10% since 2010. Vacancy rising. Jobs exist, if logistics or healthcare are your thing. Dreamers? Not so much. Violent crime is nearly double the national average. Property crime is up too. Local pride persists, endearing but a little heartbreaking. As one resident said, Peoria is like that high school friend who peaked early and now works nights at a vape shop but won't stop talking about that one game from 2006. Architecture? Mostly brick, beige, or busted. Sometimes all three at once. Even the coffee shops feel like high school business class projects. You wake up in a $580 loft, walk the riverfront, drink $2.50 coffee, geese honking overhead. It's peaceful, familiar, warm, but you can feel the city waiting, hoping for something. Peoria has roughly the same violent crime rate as New Orleans. One has beads and parades, the other has broken vending machines and for lease signs. Number 1, Brownsville, Texas, where rent is so cheap, your Zillow alerts might need therapy. Palm trees, border town flavor, life-changing tamales, and a cost of living so low it creates survivor's guilt. It's right by South Padre Island. You could pretend you're living on vacation. Pretend. Median rent, $693. Cost of living, 29% below average. Unemployment, 6.1%. Violent crime, 22% above average. Poverty, 29.3%. Weather, 107 degrees Fahrenheit on repeat. Shade sold separately. Rent, mortgage, utilities combined cost less than brunch in Austin. But your AC might develop trauma from the workload. A Redditor described Brownsville perfectly. Living here feels like a slow-cooked telenovela. Hot, dramatic, and somehow everyone is related. The heat, not the weather. Punishment. The sun doesn't set, it gets bored. Bugs are athletic. I once saw one do a pull-up on a screen door. Recently ranked one of the least expensive metro areas in the country, and the only one where cowboy boots still trend on Google. Remember Decatur's named potholes? Brownsville has humidity with an attitude problem. Would you choose a place where rent is practically a meme, but your sweat glands retire on day 2? Like the video if you've ever stayed somewhere simply because it was cheap and told yourself it builds character. Subscribe for more ways to save money, stay sane, and maybe accidentally relocate to a city you've never heard of. On purpose.